The Oval Office had the air of a battlefield command center, tense, crowded, and full of half-baked ideas that no one had the courage to dismiss outright. President Biden sat at the resolute desk, a mug of untouched coffee growing cold next to a memo stamped, "Urgent." Around him, his senior staff huddled like conspirators, their voices low but urgent. Kamala dozed peacefully on the couch, like the weight of the world had been lifted from her. Well, not if they had anything to say about it. Ron Klain broke the silence, pacing as he always did when the pressure was at its peak. "This is it, folks. We've been handed an opening and we're going to take it." Dana Remus, the White House counsel, looked skeptical. "Ron, it's 4 days to the inauguration. With all due respect, I still don't see how this isn't a complete meltdown of constitutional norms." "Norms?" Klain barked. "Do you think Trump cared about norms? About preserving the integrity of the system when he spent months denying the boss won in 2020? He jabbed a finger toward Biden, who raised his hands defensively. "Hey, leave me out of this for a second," Biden said, though a flicker of amusement crossed his face. "Let's hear the pitch." Remus sighed and slid a folder across the desk. "Okay, here's the theory. The 22nd Amendment says no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. That's the key. If Trump's claim that your 2020 win was illegitimate is true, if you really did steal the election, Joe, then he technically never left office." The room went quiet. Everyone stared at the folder as though it were radioactive. "That means," Remus continued, "Trump's win in 2024 could count as a third term, and a third term is unconstitutional. So if we lean into this, if we argue that your confession proves his 2020 loss was a sham, we can disqualify him from running again. We've just got to reopen one of his old lawsuits and concede all the allegations." Klain clapped his hands together. "Exactly. This is our shot to stop him in his tracks." Biden leaned forward, his elbows on the desk, his brow furrowed. "So let me get this straight. You want me to admit I rigged the election, publicly no less, just so we can keep Trump from getting back into the White House?" "Not admit," Klain corrected. "Stipulate. You're not saying you rigged anything. You're saying you're willing to accept his argument for the sake of constitutional consistency." "Constitutional consistency," Biden repeated as though testing the words on his tongue. "That's a hell of a euphemism for insanity, Ron." But the room buzzed with a strange energy. Even Dana, the most skeptical of the bunch, could feel it. This insane plan might actually work. 2 days later, Biden stood at a podium in the East Room, a bright red MAGA hat perched firmly on his brow. Cameras whirred and reporters leaned forward agape, their pens poised over notepads. "My fellow Americans," Biden began, "I've always believed in the integrity of our democratic process, but I also believe in the rule of law and in the principle that no one, not even a former president, is above it. That's why today I'm acknowledging that the doubts raised about the 2020 election are valid." Gasps ripple through the room. A reporter stands up, stammering a question, but Biden holds up his hand. "Valid. Not because I did anything wrong, but because Donald Trump and his allies have convinced me that the election was illegitimate. He won, I lost. Since that's true, as they've been claiming, he has been president all along, and inaugurating him in 2025 would violate the 22nd Amendment of the Constitution." Touching his hat, Joe continued, "With my newfound love for MAGA, it breaks my heart. But we cannot allow a president to have a third term." The headlines are apocalyptic within the hour. Biden backs Trump's claims to ban him from office. The news cycle spins like a tornado, pulling in constitutional scholars, legal analysts, and every political operative with a Twitter account. Trump himself is uncharacteristically silent for nearly a full day before he emerges from Mar-a-Lago, visibly red-faced, for an impromptu press conference. "This is the biggest scam in American history," Trump raged. "First they stole my second term, and now they are trying to steal my third. Steal my third by saying it's the second. No, I mean steal my second term by saying it's my third. It's ridiculous, folks, totally ridiculous. Everyone knows Sleepy Joe was sworn in illegally. No, he wasn't. This is a disgrace." Meanwhile, partisan judges across the country scour the administration's motions. But they are chock full of recent Supreme Court rulings, and the courts are unable to make heads or tails of how their rulings would affect the case. So it proceeds. Across the country, Democrats and Republicans alike watch in stunned disbelief as Trump, the man who had spent years refusing to acknowledge Biden's presidency, now finds his lawyers defending its legitimacy. Their legal filings flood the courts, now arguing that Biden had been the rightful president all along, a twist that leaves even seasoned political commentators struggling to find words. This is like watching two people saw through the branch they're both sitting on, one cable news anchor remarked. And the branch is the Constitution. In the White House, the mood is jubilant. Klain toasts the team with plastic cups of champagne, grinning like a man who had just pulled off the heist of the century. Even Remus allows herself a small smile as she scans the latest legal briefs from Trump's team, each one inadvertently bolstering Biden's legitimacy. Biden, however, seems less certain. He stands by the window, looking out over the South Lawn, his hands clasped behind his back. "You know this could blow up in our faces," he said quietly. Klain stepped up beside him. "What does that matter? Even if they prove us wrong or even expose us as liars, will that ever restore their legitimacy? Not for half the country. You've been on the other side." Biden nodded slowly, though his expression remained troubled. "It's funny," he said. "All these years I thought Trump was the one breaking democracy. Turns out we're all just taking turns with the sledgehammer." For a moment the room falls silent, as if no one's sure what to say. Klain rolls his eyes. "Democracy is doing what the voters want. We tell the voters what to want. It hasn't been democracy for a long time, so don't feel bad." The group nodded in agreement, but Joe looked pained. Klain clapped him on the shoulder. "Don't worry, Mr. President," he said. "Kamala can fix it." Biden finally cracked a smile and let out a chuckle. "Sure she will, Ron. Sure she will."